What's up, Team Bull? I want to do a breakdown for you of my screen and what I'm looking at. I've got a lot going on, so I want to make sure if you guys are trading with me, you understand what you're looking at. So on the left-hand side of my screen, we have the Nasdaq, and I am watching at all times 4 different time frames. Sometimes I'll change which time frames these are, but I always will have the 15-minute, the 5-minute, and the 1-minute. And sometimes the 3-minute, sometimes the 2-minute, or sometimes I'll flip this up actually to the 1 hour. The reason why I'm doing this is that I want to see what's happening on multiple time frames because each time frame tells a different story and it gives me more context. Also, this allows me to know what I can expect out of my trade. When I enter off the 1-minute with a tight stop, I might be looking for a smaller move, more of a scalp. Whereas if I take an entry off the 5-minute with a bigger target, I know that it's more likely to go in my direction, I guess is the best way to put it, towards that target when it's a trade based off the 5-minute. The higher the time frame, the bigger the move. Super simple stuff, but I like to look at multiple time frames because it gives me more context for what's happening minute to minute, right? Pretty much, I'm always looking for trades based off of a close or almost close if we're really close to closing a 5-minute candle. So this morning I took a short. I took it 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes in to open. So the first 5-minute candle had almost closed, but there was a lot of bearish momentum. I was pretty sure it was going to close right around where it did. And I entered off the 1-minute with this little 3-bar continuation. If you look at the 3-minute, we also had continuation where I entered, right? Whereas if you look at the 15-minute, this bar was still forming. So when I entered, it was still a bearish looking bar. But what I did see is that we swept higher and we engulfed the previous green candle. All of that being said, that is what I'm looking for on the Nasdaq. The other thing that I'm paying attention to when I'm looking at these different time frames is volume. So volume tells a different story depending on what time frame you're on. I really like to look primarily at 1-minute volume and 5-minute volume. And I look at both, especially towards the beginning of the open, because on the 5-minute, right after this first candle closes, it's going to have really high volume. Typically, everything after this is going to be lower because that is the opening 5-minute candle. So it's irrelevant. Whereas if I look at the 1-minute candles, it tells more of a story, well, where volume is dropping off. And as you can see, this first green candle, really high volume, drop, 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 drop. And then this green candle, the very first green candle, or I guess it's the second green candle of the day, has much higher volume than the previous 3 candles. It's also a bullish hammer. When this happened, I kind of perked my ears up, started paying more attention, and it's kind of just a warning sign. Okay, price may start to reverse. There are clearly buyers in this area. And so you start to be aware. If that doesn't make sense, I'll do further videos on how I look at volume, but I just wanted to give you a brief insight into what I'm paying attention to. Now let's move to the right side of my screen. So on the right side of my screen, I have the 4 top tickers that make up the Nasdaq. Why do I have these here? Well, oftentimes, if there is going to be a big move, you can see it coming on these tickers as it's starting to happen on the Nasdaq. This is Confluence, and it's just a piece of what I use. It's not the whole story. I'm mainly trading off of levels and price action, but if I'm feeling a little bit unsure, I'm looking for a little bit more confirmation, I sweep my eyes over to the right-hand side of the screen and I look to see what's going on. This morning, you can see that when I took that trade, we had been pushing down really aggressively on Apple. We had been pushing down really aggressively on Microsoft. We had pushed up on Nvidia. However, we stalled out and closed right at that previous day high, which is a key level for me and an area where we may start to reject, which we did. As you see, we sold off right after that. And then on Amazon, we had pushed up, but kind of stalled out around that pre-market high and started to sell back down. All of that being said, again, this is just something that I'm watching. If you are new to trading, I highly recommend not putting these on your screen yet. It's going to be too much to look at. If your eyes aren't trained to do it, it's going to be overwhelming. However, this is something that I look at. So I want you guys to know, if you're following me, what I'm looking at. I want to be fully transparent with you with my entire plan, the ins, the outs. One other thing I will say that helps me, if you are someone who wants to try starting to incorporate these tickers and watching them, is that if you notice, these are volume candlesticks. My Nasdaq is not volume candlesticks, they're just regular candlesticks. But these four I have set on volume candlesticks because I'm typically just glancing over to them. It's really helpful to be able to understand the volume on the candles. So, as you can see, the higher the volume, the thicker the candlestick. Um, so just something to be aware of. Again, if you see my screens and you're wondering, why do those candlesticks look funny? If you want to do this, all you do is simply click on whatever box on TradingView. If you're charting on TradingView, you click up here on the candlestick and you switch it to volume candles. If I switched it to regular candles, if you can see NVIDIA, I just switched back to regular candles. That's what it would look like. But I have volume candles on, so it looks like this. Hopefully that helps you guys understand a little bit more about what is on my screen and what I'm paying attention to. There will be more videos after this to break down my levels, my setups, all of that, but I thought this was a good place to start before we get into strategy.